view from my window, where I tell the stories from my window. Now, when I mean from my window, I'm not looking out the window, but it's from my point of view. Today's episode, we're going to talk about the Dollar Day with Clark. It was nothing, even I always talk about how South Philly was like its own little town. Everybody knows Philly, West Philly got their own description of how they live, but in South Philly, the stories and what every hood has been through and everybody's experiences was like nothing else. Down where I'm from in the Jets, from Wilson, where I'm from, we had an individual. He was family. He was, he was like the mayor of our side of the area where we were from. I lived at 2105 Taney Terrace. So, my man Clark, Book, and all those guys were like the guys. When I was young, we thought they were. We were like. We thought they were. I only could compare them of early day Jeff Benzo, those kind of guys, but they were in the hood. So the fun when I was younger, it was on Belly Terrace at the end of the Breezeway House. It was a lady named Miss Nancy. Everybody used to hang out there. Miss Nancy Young, very polite lady, but everybody knew her, all her kids, Shar, everybody, the whole family, the Young family, everybody hung out with somebody from their family. But just to give you the basic story, so Miss Nancy family, she had a house on a little spot in the Breezeway, in Belley, had a spot at, and they lived on on Jackson Street. But Clark and all of them decided to build basketball courts on Tatey. We had the open field on our structure, but we didn't have. Well, it probably used to be basketball courts in the 70s, but they must have torn them down. So for one summer, Clark and all of them would do what's called the Dollar Days, where we were outside and they were playing basketball. They would give us money, this, that, and the third. But Taney Terrace used to be popping. Clark and Craig and all of them, Keefe, all of them would come play basketball on that strip. But it was funny, but it was scary because, as youngsters, our parents used to say stuff like, yo, don't stay close to the house while they playing basketball, because, anything could happen. They could start shooting, and then I would have to run to the house. But one of the funniest things is that Clark and all of them knew that our parents thought that kind of stuff. So it would be exciting sitting outside watching them playing each other back and forth. Now, some cats, man, coming up, used to get their ass whooped trying to be tough out there, whatever. You learn how to fight out there, but it was entertaining watching those guys bust on each other, play ball, bet money. You know what I'm saying? You used to have cats come from the other side, from Banbury side, and play basketball. But Clark always had the team stacked. Him, Booker, all of them would always win the back and forth. But a few times they would play at nighttime. It'd be some nighttime games. Me, myself, Cornell. So we used to sneak out there. I was probably the youngest one, maybe by a year. I think Cornell and Rollo maybe got me by a year, or we might all be the same age. But I remember when I would be outside at the 10, 11 o'clock when they're out there playing late basketball, and they would do some of the craziest shit, like act like they get ready to start running or they get ready to fight and start shooting. And we would haul ass to the crib, and Mom would open the door, get in the house, get in the house, get in the house. That was the funniest part, because they were just trolling. That was the term we use now, but they would be trolling at that time. So to take you back to the Dollar Days, we used to watch them literally sit outside, play cards or whatever, and then all of the younger kids, they would come out and they would have wads of money and be giving kids money. I remember it was a couple young kids that sneakers used to always be terrible. When they would go shopping, they would come back and bring sneakers for those little kids. Sneakers was tore up. I remember one Easter, a couple days before we had the school break, him and Book and them would come outside and ask us what y'all young niggas wearing for Easter. Most of our parents bought stuff for Easter, most couldn't. But most of us couldn't wear the Jordans and rock all that time. So those dudes would give 20, 25, 30, or whatever, whatever. You know what I'm saying? And one good thing about them, if you had talent, you know, they would tell you, get out our faces, nigga, go right. Go do this, go do that. If you play basketball, Clark would tell you, don't be out here at a certain amount of time. If you, like, I was in music, so him and Buka would say funny shit to me, like, hey, man, you better go in there and make some, and go DJ, because the making beat thing wasn't popular at that time. You better go in there and work on the turntables, work on being the DJ, get your big ass off this corner, get your big ass out here. Why you out here this time of night? And when they would see me outside with Cornelius at a certain time, but you better take your ass in the house, man, go to school. So those dudes were very influential. We looked up to them. Up to this day, when I hear about him possibly coming home, I think about all he's missed, and I think about everything that he probably has planned to do once he's home. But what it could have been if he was home, you know, that his whole, I know right now Buka and them probably still get money, Craig and them, they got families, but just imagine, and I always do that view from my window to imagine what could have been if he was home. He could have been the mind that he had. He would have been running an Amazon. He would have been running a Cash Money, a Fortune 500 business. That's the mentor that he had. That's his organization. That's the organization that they had. You know, even Miss Nancy, you know, they would have been the biggest thing was going on, and I'm pretty sure, you know, Clark would have, you know, has a plan when he's coming home. But that's what I remember, you know, seeing him outside when they put the basketball courts up on Taney Terrace. They used to play ball. Everybody would come around, and he always would have his five. And I'm trying to think who was all on the team at that time when he had his starting five. I think it was Keefe, Craig, Buka. They used to play all the time. And one thing with them was, every time you seen them, or every time we seen them coming from like downtown or coming from somewhere, they always, you know, look like money. You know what I'm saying? But not too flashy, where to the point where, because the most of those guys, Craig and all of them, were real from a different era, where they didn't have to with the clothes to show they had money. They didn't have to floss, and you knew they had money, but they didn't have to floss, and they wasn't the type of guys in today's social media. They wouldn't be the type of guys that show money that they got, show the cars they got. That's not who they were. Clark definitely wouldn't have been on Instagram and wouldn't have been on Facebook talking about with a rack with 10,000 in his pocket. Them dudes wasn't the type. He wasn't the type anyway to be snitching on himself. He's not even from that cloth. You know what I'm saying? None of them are from that cloth. Even some of the cats from the Youngs that were getting money, you know, those guys ducking, they wasn't the type. They wouldn't have been on their social media doing what some of these young guys are doing now, showing all this money, because they didn't want that attention. Now, when those things happen, and Clark got locked up and those things happened, must have been some loose lips anywhere, because it definitely didn't carry that type of person. But those guys were genuine. He was a genuine dude when it came to dealing with us youngins coming up and making sure that whole strip, make sure we had fun, and making sure if people didn't have it, he gave it. You know, so that's my view on, and that's that area, Bentley Terrace, Jackson Street, Taney, and Terrace was popping. You even had at the end of the corner, you had Tay and her crew, Char, they hung together. Girls wanted to be with that crew. You know what I'm saying? You know, even when we was younger, we wanted to be the younger version of Clark and the Squad, and they developed the younger crews spent off from Clark and those generations. Rel went to, I'll get into that later, but other crews spun off from that era, from that Clark era. You know, so before we turn off, if Clark comes out, sees the light, I'm pretty sure he still got that $1 million plan, that $1 million idea. This is for him.